I used to have a conspiracy theory / grudge against Microsoft, through which I blamed them for the downfall of gaming in general. And by them I mean the Xbox division. And for the most part I just believe it was me being me, and it's not something that everybody believed. But I recently saw the channel Top Hat Gaming Man posted a very similar video to my idea, only he came about it through the lens of someone that is a console player, and tackled the idea that the original Xbox kind of ruined console games, and gaming consoles in general, and he was kinda right. So emboldened by that idea, and the fact that because of IFA 2017 I didn't actually have time to make a proper video about anything this week, I'm gonna tell you my side of this concept coming from the PC angle. And maybe once and for all we can answer that ancient question. Did Microsoft ruin gaming? Well, no, it didn't. It's still alive and well. But it sure didn't help that Microsoft repeatedly stabbed it in the back several times around the launch of the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and Windows 10 and Vista and probably what's gonna come next. Microsoft has been involved with video games for a very long time. I mean, it's called Microsoft Flight Simulator for a reason. It's a company that has had its hands in video gaming since the 80s. Certainly it didn't have much to do with it, even though, you know, they pretty soon had the biggest platform for video games possible with DOS, then with Windows. But they did know that gaming was a thing, that's why they made DirectX. Well, they also made DirectX because without it, every program, not just games, would have difficulty accessing the resources of a system on account of how badly Windows was made. But so it was that in the ages of old, Microsoft brought us wonders like Close Combat, Age of Empires, that Outwars game I made a show about a couple of months ago, and of course my beloved Crimson Skies. I mean, Microsoft was the company that published the PC version of Metal Gear Solid 1. You know, the one you can't buy anywhere, well, you can't buy the second one either, even though it also had a PC version. And it picked up the MechWarrior license too and made MechWarrior 4, Mech Commander, a second one at least, Midtown Madness, hey, they made that too, Star Lancer, who can forget Star Lancer, or Rashomon Skull, Zoo Tycoon. The point is they published quite a lot of games for the PC and even make them, like they had their studios build these games. But then something happened, and that thing was the Xbox. This console was made as a reaction to Sony saying that they will take over digital entertainment in the home. Out with PCs, and with the PS2 it'll do everything. It'll have movies, it'll have games, it'll have music, and that's it basically. Because, you know, consoles can't do video editing is what I'm saying, and they couldn't really do internet back then either. So then Microsoft came with the idea of combating this perceived threat with their own system. One that would be a DirectX box. A computer in the living room, small, portable-ish, it was kind of gigantic, and with very, very big controllers. Something to be there for the people who wanted kind of a PC, but not really. The thing you have to know is that this was back when Microsoft was still kind of its in we are going to rule the world phase. So it didn't do this intentionally to offer consumers an alternative to the PlayStation 2 or the GameCube or the Dreamcast. It did it because it saw something was trying to muscle in on its territory and decided to overreact in a big way, and in a very, very, very expensive way. Incredibly expensive, because developing a new hardware platform, even though it's kind of based on Windows, is still not something cheap. And to its credit, it was successful enough, selling 24 million units in the era when Sony sold, what was it? 155 million PlayStation 2s. To be fair, that's over a much larger time span on account of no one caring about the original Xbox, pretty much when everybody realized there was nothing else on it apart from Halo. So how does this impact PC gaming? How did it ruin PC gaming and gaming in general? Well, the companies that were involved at the time in building consoles had a certain legacy to them. You had Nintendo, who made its own games and was Nintendo. It still is Nintendo. Even when they make a crappy ass console like the Wii U, which to be fair, it wasn't a crappy console, but the software support for it was non-existent for many years, it will still sell bajillions because it has one of the greatest franchises ever made, Mario. It's ingrained in culture to the point where you identify that with video games before anything else. Maybe Tetris, which is again theirs. You had Sega, who had its own traditions and died in the console market then, and Sony, who started out with the PlayStation. It made its own original things, it stole a couple of things from Nintendo, and it helped usher in a brand new era of 3D, of games that were maybe a bit more mature, though that's not really saying much. They're not mature, actually they're more adolescent-ish, and it continued with that trend in the PlayStation 2 era. So where does that leave Microsoft? Well, that leaves it where pretty much every new company that starts its own console is left. They have to make their own original stuff. And you've seen things like the 3DO do not that well in that segment, the Apple Pippin neither, heck, Atari even had a legacy but they did nothing with the Jaguar. It was a hard place to start. Doing things from scratch, very, very difficult. So Microsoft did what any company that has a very, very big market from which it does not directly profit, and a very, very small one from which they can directly profit. They sacrificed one for the other. In the year 2000, Microsoft bought Bungie, a studio that was making currently games such as Oni, which is again a very good game, and it was working on a third-person shooter called Halo for the Windows platform and for Macintosh. Remember when Bungie made Mac games? Man, you'd have to run a marathon back to those memories. Get it? Because their first games were made a long time ago. So Microsoft took Bungie, they gave them funding, they even helped them finish Oni, but they made Halo a console exclusive. It was released first and foremost on the Xbox, and it sort of cemented the idea that you could do first-person shooters properly on a console, which they really didn't show that. I mean, GoldenEye already did that with copious amount of auto-aim that is still absolutely present in all the games, and it didn't even do that great of a job at being, you know, a superb first-person shooter. Part of it was interesting, the lore appeared interesting, the setting appeared interesting, the characters appeared interesting, the music was amazing, the multiplayer was, to be fair, on consoles, something novel. You did have GoldenEye that let you play in split screen 4 players, but this one let you do it online, which was something, again, novel on consoles. It cemented the idea that, yeah, you could play first-person shooters, slow ones, with simplified mechanics, on a console, and they can be very, very fun. And they were. And since that's the only game that sold, I mean, actually sold on Xbox, that kind of became the de facto for it, which is something that the Top Hat gaming person said in his video. But also meant that the PC was getting the shaft. We had to wait close to 2 years for the PC version of Halo to actually be released. Not because porting it would be difficult, I mean, you were porting it from DirectX 8.1 to DirectX 9. It was 8.1 still. Microsoft is incredibly deceitful when it comes to everything it can. I remember it showing pictures of Halo 1, a DirectX 8.1 game, compared to pictures of an alpha version of Crysis, which was a DirectX 9 game, and they said, well, this is what you can do in DirectX 9, showing Halo, and this is what you can do in DirectX 10, showing Crysis. So that's why we have to buy Vista. And we all know how that went. And because of this focus on console, the PC platform started to sort of dwindle. I mean, sure, they did try at first and actually released a PC version of Fable, that fantastic game, and A Rise of Nations and Age of Empires 3, can't forget about that, and then they did Bupkis. I mean, in the sense of actually trying to support Windows as a gaming platform. They didn't. They pretty much sold us out. Well, actually, I don't know who they sold us out to. They just left us dangling in the wind to be eaten by rodents, and that's pretty much when the whole idea that PC games are dead started. Microsoft needed there to be less gaming platforms on the market so it can actually compete. And because it basically owned one, it owned Windows, it sidelined it. It supported it less and less and less. And it cannibalized everything that it could and put that into the Xbox platform. Until eventually the Xbox people were running Microsoft's game division. Yes, even the division that handled PC games. Which is why everything sucked for many, many years. The epitome of suckness began with the Xbox 360 era. That is when the last true great platform war began. It was the age when you would find people mocking PC users or, ha ha ha, your platform is dead, you don't have games, PCs are dead. And you couldn't really say much about it. I mean, Microsoft, the company that, handled the PC platform, basically threw in the towel, threw everybody under a bus, and made their own console. It was a sign to other people that maybe Microsoft didn't trust the PC to be a gaming platform, that it's something for spreadsheets and that's it. It can't do games. How can it? It's not like you can plug in anything to it and make it do anything you want to. No, it's just for spreadsheets. And Microsoft's marketing kind of fed into that, and then the internet, and then kind of culture in general. There was just a console war now between PlayStation and Xbox, and PC was dead. It wasn't actually dead. I mean, in 2004 you had World of Warcraft that kind of outsold and outprofited several console generations put together with just one game, and it still does. And that's just World of Warcraft. But that didn't seem to matter. That wasn't a sign that PCs are still completely viable for video games. Not when the only games you would see in stores, the only games you would see on TV were console games, because that is what was being marketed. Blockbuster, big budget action fests, Hollywood level production, as some would say, is what began to dominate gaming because of Microsoft, because Microsoft could only throw money at a problem in order to fix it. The problem being that no one cared about the Xbox because the PlayStation 2 had a lot more games, and not just big budget games, it had smaller games, interesting games, varied games, weird games, games made in Japan. Microsoft could not compete with those games in terms of originality, in terms of interestingness, in terms of enjoyment. But they could up the budget, they could up the spectacle, they could Michael Bay the crap out of anything, and they did. And so went out the window the flight simulator games, well, they launched one more and they were gone, the dogfighting simulator games, the MechWarrior games. They made a Shadowrun one, which had nothing to do with Shadowrun, and then came the Great Bane. There was a point when Microsoft kinda understood that the public sort of figured out that they abandoned them completely in terms of PC gaming, so when Windows Vista was coming along, they decided, you know what, let's bring them back, let's give them what they want. Halo 2. But are we launching 3? Now give them Halo 2 in an enhanced edition, because they never had the original since we didn't launch it, and make it exclusive to Windows Vista with DirectX 10 and the great Satan, Games for Windows Live. Games for Windows Live was the biggest lie in video games, because it wasn't Games for Windows Live. I used it when they released it. It didn't have mouse control. It was the Xbox Live interface with a name change. It was horrible. It was horrid. Not even when they changed it to actually be usable on a PC did it actually improve, because it was still a pointless piece of crap. One made not to enhance gaming, but to shackle it. They made it in the belief that the people playing on PC were as much of a captive audience as the ones playing on Xbox. They put a multiplayer tax on the multiplayer modes of their first Games for Windows Live titles. This is a decision the likes of which a human being would not make. It's something that a bunch of executives completely withdrawn from actual reality, with no understanding of the platform they're making something for, would decide. Or Balmer. And it may seem like I'm exaggerating, but keep in mind that Windows Vista was an abomination upon mankind. And some of you may say, well, I liked it. Yeah, you know who didn't like it? Everybody that owned a sound card. Because in one of the beta versions of it, they just pulled direct sound. You had sound card manufacturers in an absolute panic. It was the apocalypse. In one version it was there, in another one it wasn't. And you know what kind of needed direct sound? Video games. And the sound cards themselves, otherwise it wouldn't work even in Windows to listen to beeping. And from then on it was just crap after crap. At this point, Microsoft just completely abandoned the PC. They published barely 3 games a year. They just did not care. The Xbox division was in full force, even though they still owned the biggest gaming platform possible, Windows, with the most popular game possible, Solitaire. Solitaire kicked the ever-loving crap out of Mario, out of Tetris, out of everything. Solitaire is the most played video game in history. Even though it had that, it couldn't do anything to actually deliver on games, on improving the experience, on making Steam. Because it's not like digital distribution was something new that Valve invented. No, Stardock was making it from the 90s. Microsoft could have done this. Microsoft could have offered PC gamers a solution to get games digitally, to compensate for the fact that their marketing pushed PC games out of stores. You literally had stores not stocking PC games or shoving them in one single rack in the back, to the point where you had companies like Paradox refusing to deal with retailers anymore because of how majorly dickish they were on account of they were being paid monstrous amounts of money to push console games, Xbox games in the front and throw the crap out the back. The crap being PC games. Not that they were crappy, but to Microsoft they were kind of crap because they were not making money directly on them. Whereas they would make $10 regardless of who was publishing or selling a video game on the console. And if it was their game, well, they would make even more money. But Microsoft didn't do something like Steam. Because again, this wasn't the company that actually had an idea of where to go. It didn't have a vision, didn't have any clue as to what it could do with PC gaming or what even that was. Valve showed up and kicked them in the crotch so hard that they've been trying for the past, 7 years to build their own Steam. And they still haven't gotten it through their heads that it's too late. Let me rephrase that. It's too late to make something as horrible as the Microsoft Windows Store. If it was 2007, yeah, sure, okay. It's not perfect, but it'll get there. Now, heck, even Uplay doesn't suck as hard anymore. And mind you, Uplay sucked really hard. And the absolute saddest part is that Microsoft has not learned a thing from all of this. It didn't learn a thing from when it abandoned PC games for the original Xbox. It didn't learn a thing from when it abandoned PC again for the Xbox 360. It didn't learn anything from when it tried to shackle it to Windows Vista and the Windows version of Xbox Live, because it did it again with Windows 10 and DirectX 12 and the Windows Store. They make promises, they say, well, we're not gonna abandon PC anymore. We're gonna do it justice. Here, have Age of Empires 4. No. Microsoft, never forget, is the company that gave Ensemble Studios, a studio that never made a bad game, the task of making Halo Wars. And they did it. They made Halo Wars. They made an RTS game viable on a console. They fired all those people. They told them, you are fired 2 months before they finished Halo Wars. They finished that game knowing that when it's done, they'll be fired. Regardless of how well the game does, they will not have a job. They will not be able to make Age of Empires 4 or 5. They will not be able to work again on the franchise. The PC franchise. It's the same company, and it has consistently ruined everything it has touched. It's been an unhealthy influence on console games, what with turning everything into a shooter, and it's just cannibalized Windows and consistently crapped on it, even though it started out with the intention of saving Windows as a platform by fighting against Sony. And hey, you know what? You can play pretty much, well, not all of them, but a lot of PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 games through Sony's cloud emulation thing on Windows. Can I play any Xbox 360 exclusive on Windows? No, I can't. Are they going to port any of them? Are they going to bring Halo 3 finally? No, they won't. Are developers going to have to pay out of their own pocket to make their own ports, like Remedy did with the much delayed because of Microsoft Alan Wake? Yes, they will. because Microsoft does not care about PC. It never did. It doesn't care about it as a gaming platform. It doesn't care about it as a productive platform. It cares only to the point where other people muscle in on its territory, and then they try to imitate them and ruin everything in the process. When Sony came in, they became a mirror vision of Sony and pushed out crap onto everyone. When Apple came, then we got Windows 8 and now Windows 10. This isn't a company that innovates anymore. It's a company that reacts badly. It's a company that will set its house on fire just so no one else can. And that is what it did to PC gaming. Thankfully, Valve had a fire extinguisher. And at one point the plan to make a SteamOS, but it sort of stopped, even though it should really ramp up now because everything they feared about Windows 8, well, Microsoft's kind of doing it now with Windows 10 in the Windows Store. Get on it, Gabe. Get on it. In short, Microsoft did ruin everything. Goodbye.